The world is changing fast. And this time, the center of gravity isn't in Washington or Beijing or Moscow. It's in Africa. Across 54 nations, a new contest for influence, trade, and power is quietly unfolding. The question is simple. Who will shape Africa's future, and who will be left behind? For decades, Africa was often seen as a place others came to invest in, advise, or influence. But in 2025, the game has changed. Africa is now setting its own terms, choosing its partners, and demanding respect. In the past few months, global headlines have shown the shift more clearly than ever. A KU.S. Africa trade program that had lasted for a quarter of a century finally expired. It's called the African Growth and Opportunity Act, known by many as AGOA. For years, it allowed many African countries to export goods to the United States without paying tariffs. It created thousands of jobs, built factories, and strengthened economies. But when it expired at the end of September 2025, many of those industries were suddenly at risk. In Kenya, textile factories that once shipped clothing duty-free to America are now uncertain about the future. In South Africa, fruit exporters are facing new tariffs that could cut into profits. Countries that had relied on that trade route are searching for options. Washington has promised to renew the program, but for only 1 year. A 1-year extension doesn't offer the stability businesses need. It's like renewing a lease month to month when you're trying to build a house. You can't plan big when the ground beneath you might shift again next year. This hesitation has opened the door for others. And that's where China and Russia step in. China's involvement in Africa is not new, but its approach is very different. Instead of endless diplomatic statements, China builds roads, bridges, ports, railways, power plants, all rising from African soil with the help of Chinese engineers, funding, and companies. From the standard gauge railway in Kenya to industrial parks in Ethiopia and oil refineries in Nigeria, China's presence is visible and practical. And to many African nations, that matters more than promises. Critics in the West call it strategic, even opportunistic. But from the African perspective, the calculation is simpler. China delivers. And that delivery changes lives by connecting cities, powering homes, and creating local jobs. Meanwhile, Russia is playing a quieter but increasingly bold role. After years of informal influence through private networks, Russia has begun formalizing its engagement. It's now building deeper military and energy partnerships with countries like Mali, Niger, and the Central African Republic. In Mali, for example, Moscow recently signed agreements to strengthen trade and energy cooperation, even exploring plans for a small nuclear power facility to help with electricity shortages. For African governments that have grown frustrated with Western bureaucracy, Russia's offer of quick action, less political pressure, and visible results feels attractive. These moves come at a time when Africa's own leaders are asserting independence more than ever. They're not choosing sides between Washington, Beijing, or Moscow. They're saying, we'll work with whoever respects our goals. That's a new kind of confidence, one born from decades of watching global powers talk about partnership while prioritizing their own interests. As one young African entrepreneur recently said, "We don't want aid. We want fair business." That sentiment is spreading fast. Let's look at what this means in real terms. When the U.S. hesitates on long-term trade renewal, African countries immediately start exploring deals with others. For example, in the months following the trade expiry, China announced new zero-tariff policies for dozens of African nations. It's a move designed to attract exporters who once relied on the U.S. market. At the same time, Russia is expanding its footprint by offering training, mining cooperation, and energy projects, areas where Western partners have been more cautious. This combination of timing and opportunity means Africa now holds more leverage than ever before. It can negotiate with multiple powers at once, driving better deals for itself. But this new competition isn't just about economics. It's about perception, about who truly understands Africa's direction. For the United States, the challenge is rebuilding trust and proving reliability. Many African observers say Washington's approach feels outdated, too focused on lectures and conditions, not enough on action and equality. If promises keep coming without follow-through, the U.S. risks losing not just influence, but credibility. For China, the challenge is different. Its projects are massive, but concerns about debt and transparency have grown. Some African governments are starting to renegotiate terms to ensure fairness. Yet overall, China still holds the upper hand in visibility. Wherever you go, Nairobi, Lusaka, Accra, you see physical results of Chinese engagement. Russia, on the other hand, is still testing how far it can go. Its influence in Africa is more about strategy, small steps that build loyalty over time. It's offering defense partnerships, energy assistance, and political support in global forums. For some nations, that's a valuable counterbalance to Western pressure. All this is happening while Africa itself is changing. New tech hubs are rising in Nigeria and Kenya. Startups are attracting global investment. The African Continental Free Trade Area, a massive initiative to create a single market across the continent, is slowly taking shape. If it succeeds, Africa could trade more within itself and depend less on outside powers. The irony is that as other powers compete for Africa's attention, Africa is quietly building its own center of gravity. It's no longer waiting for others to set the agenda. From the Sahel to the Horn of Africa, from Lusaka to Lagos, leaders are asking a simple question: who brings real value to the table? The truth is, none of these powers, not the US, not China, not Russia, can claim to control Africa anymore. Those days are gone. What we're seeing now is a negotiation between equals, though not always recognized as such. Still, the stakes are high. Africa holds the world's youngest population, vast untapped resources, and immense potential for renewable energy and digital innovation. Whoever wins Africa's partnership will shape not just trade, but the balance of global power for decades. In 2025, the contest is no longer about ideology. It's about trust, respect, and delivery. It's about who listens and who acts. When American envoys talk about democracy, many Africans listen. But when Chinese engineers build a highway, they remember. When Russian contractors train local security forces, communities notice. In this competition, visibility and action matter more than speeches. And yet, there's a twist. Many African nations are learning to play all sides and doing it smartly. One government signs trade deals with the US, infrastructure loans with China, and energy partnerships with Russia, balancing each to serve its own interest. It's not manipulation, it's strategy. For once, Africa is the one calling the shots. This shift also reflects something deeper, a generational change. Young Africans, educated and connected to the world, are demanding a new kind of relationship, one that values innovation, entrepreneurship, and equality. They're tired of old narratives that paint Africa as dependent. They see their continent as the next frontier of growth, and they want partners who see it the same way. So as the global spotlight returns to Africa, the United States, China, and Russia are all learning that Africa can no longer be approached as a project. It must be treated as a partner. In the months ahead, the decisions made in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow will determine who truly understands that message. Will the U.S. secure a longer, stronger trade agreement? Will China continue to deliver infrastructure without creating debt pressure? Will Russia turn its influence in a long-term cooperation that benefits ordinary Africans, not just elites? No one knows yet. But one thing is clear, the power balance has shifted. Africa is not the prize, it's the player. And as this new chapter unfolds, the rest of the world is watching. Because whoever earns Africa's trust will shape the next era of global politics. Not with threats, but with partnership. Not with dominance, but with respect. Africa's time is now. The question is, who truly understands that? If you found this video insightful, share it with others who follow you.s.Africa Relations. And tell us what you think. Is Africa finally taking charge of its destiny? Or are global powers just changing their strategies? Let's talk in the comments.